I never used to think I was afraid of anything, so I thought the haunted corn maze would be fun. We walked through the maze, laughing and telling ghost stories. But I tripped and I fell in the mud, and when I looked up, they were all gone. I wandered around the maze for hours, and by the time I finally found my friends, they insisted they'd only lost sight of me for a few minutes. I always loved the thrill of exploring abandoned places, so when I stumbled upon the old abandoned house, straight out of a scary movie, I couldn't resist. The inside was a time capsule with everything left untouched. As I explored, I noticed the portraits lining the walls seemed to watch my every move. That night, as thunder rumbled, I was jolted awake by the sensation of being watched. Pulling back my blankets, I was met with the sight of every portrait figure standing beside my bed, their painted eyes fixed on me.
While renovating our old family home, I removed a panel from the wall, revealing a hidden room. The room contained archaic medical instruments and a collection of journals documenting grotesque experiments.
I used to laugh at the old legend about the woods behind our house, but after exploring them one evening, I found a clearing with neatly dug, child-sized holes.
Every single night, I get a text from an unknown number. The message is always the same. I see you.
While camping last week, I woke up to the sound of a child laughing right outside my tent. There were no other campsites or people for miles.
I've been getting calls from an unknown number. All I hear is heavy breathing and my own voice echoing back.
I woke up when I heard my sister screaming my name and that we needed to leave the house. Without even thinking, I was in the front yard, and in that moment, the house exploded. My sister died when we were kids.
My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave and ask her to stop, but it doesn't help.
I don't usually stay at nice hotels. It was great until I was about to fall asleep. I heard a faint scratching noise from the wall. It got louder and closer until I realized it wasn't coming from the wall. It was from under the bed.
I was driving home from a Halloween party when I saw a small girl in a tattered white dress on the side of the road. I stopped to help, but when she turned, I realized her eyeless, pale face was no costume, and she vanished into thin air.
In the middle of the night, I heard my husband talking in his sleep, confessing to a murder in our town, until he woke up and said,
I hope you didn't hear that.
The lights went out during the thunderstorm, and in the next flash of lightning, I saw hundreds of faces pressed against the windows, all screaming in silence.
It was my first time driving alone at night. I could barely see the road, it was so dark. Something darted in front of the car, so I slammed on the brakes. As I came to a stop, I noticed shadowy figures approaching. It was my first time driving alone at night. I could barely see the road, it was so dark. Something darted in front of the car, so I slammed on the brakes. As I came to a stop, I noticed shadowy figures approaching.
Exploring an abandoned hotel, I walked down the hallways and heard a creepy laugh just as the room's temperature dropped to where I could suddenly see my own breath.
I'd never been to the beach before, so even though it was the middle of the night, I decided to go see. I just wanted to dip my toes in, but as soon as I did, the ground shook and a hole opened up in the sand behind me.
Last Halloween, my family had the spookiest visit to the pumpkin patch. My daughter usually loves it, but as soon as we got there, she started crying and saying that the pumpkins were screaming about not wanting to be cut open.
The house I grew up in is now abandoned and looks like a haunted house. I thought it would be fun to go see my old room, but I'll never forget the stained walls and how blood seemed to seep from the ceiling.
As a park ranger, you have to be prepared for all sorts of danger, but nothing could prepare me for the shock of discovering a campsite that seemed as if it had been painted in blood. My dad told me to never open the attic door, but when curiosity got the better of me, I found clothes inside, all tagged with names of children from our town. The park was always a place of joy and laughter, but one morning, every tree was strung with dozens of identical dolls, each with X's for eyes. I always felt safe in my childhood home, but when I returned years later, all my toys were arranged in a circle, stained with an unidentifiable red liquid. Out of nowhere, lightning struck, and in that flash I saw it. Silhouettes of people, or what seemed like people, standing still, forming a perfect circle around me.
I remember hearing you shouldn't buy mirrors at thrift stores because they could be haunted. I wish I listened, but I bought this antique one. It wasn't until late that night I heard a knocking coming from the mirror. When I looked at it, I saw a shadow figure in the reflection behind me.
We thought we were so cool, partying in a graveyard all night. It was fun until we started hearing a terrifying laughter at the edge of the woods. That's when I noticed there were suddenly dozens of shadowy figures all around us.
I was driving home through a thunderstorm along a desolate highway when I saw a figure in tattered clothes waving for help. I slowed down, but as they got closer, I saw their hollow eyes and realized they were no longer among the living.
I heard my son calling from his bedroom, and when I got to his room, I saw a shadow move under the bed. But as I bent down to look for him, I heard a whisper behind me. "Dad, that's not me."
I'm a ranger and I've seen all sorts of things, but that day, in the middle of the woods, I stumbled upon 2 tents covered in blood. Then a footstep behind me had me thinking it was the last thing I would ever see. I ran for my car, fumbled for my keys, and as I drove away, I saw a shadowy figure watching from the woods. Thanks for listening to a Blood and Breakfast short. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hiking up the Cascades was always our thing, especially in the late autumn. We had tackled many trails together. This time, everything felt different. The woods were eerily quiet when we heard rustling behind us. I turned, heart in my throat, just in time to see a massive shadow emerge from the mist. Before any of us could react, the figure lunged at Jeff. Its hands, or rather its gigantic claws, gripped him tightly. I watched in horror as one of our friends was lifted off the ground like a ragdoll and violently hurled against a tree. The sickening sound of the impact, his scream, and the spray of blood will forever be etched into my memory. As I tried to get the hell out of there, all I could think was this was no ordinary hike, and that wasn't a bear. It felt like we'd crossed paths with Bigfoot.
It was supposed to be a family vacation at our cabin in the woods, but when we got there, my heart sank as I spotted the front porch, drenched in a pool of blood. As we stepped out of the car and stared at the gruesome, sticky red handprints smearing across the wood, it was clear something terrible happened here. We followed the blood trail into the cabin, the unsettling silence, shattered furniture, and growing intensity of the stains. In the bedroom, a lifeless stranger's body lay on the bed. Blood covered everything, the bed, the floor, splattered across the walls and dripping down everything. I don't think any of us even muttered a word. We ran back to the car and left as fast as we could.
It was supposed to be a romantic getaway, but instead, it was a horrifying night that left me terrified and alone. Face to face with a convicted serial killer, I watched my fiancée butchered before my eyes. I barely escaped with my life. Everything has changed, and I will never be unprepared again. As I wandered deeper into the woods, the trail gradually disappeared under a thick carpet of fallen leaves. A bone-chilling mist crept in, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. I could hear distant, distorted whispers and felt cold fingers brush against my neck, but there was no one in sight.
I woke up to the sound of my own voice, whispering my name in a frantic tone from the other room. When I went to investigate, I found a recording of my voice playing on my laptop saying, "They're coming for you and they know where you are."